Welcome back, mortals. Beyond the headlines, a family's tragedy. Sometimes the darkness is closer than we think. Today, we're taking you through the tragic stories of murder by a little-known serial killer whose last victim hits close to home here on the Parallax Podcast.
Hi, Willow.
Hi, Carissa. I'm sorry it took me a second to get back here, but the intrusive thoughts won and I squished my cat. He was loafing so nice and delicately on the stairs, and I was like, I can't walk past you.
Right? You can't do that. That's rude. Not to mention they'll hold it against you.
So I had to hunker down and I had to squish him. And when I say squish, I mean like I hugged the cat with my entire body.
You're funny. You're funny. All right. So this is a two-parter. This is a two-part episode. And I'm going to tell you a little tale of a morning that my grandfather woke up. And he got up every morning. He read his Bible very faithfully around 5:30 in the morning. And my grandparents did not use alarm clocks. Those people knew how to get up like it was in their genetic code or something.
Actually, my grandmother, she gets up at like 4 in the morning.
Why don't I have that code? Like, I would rather not have. Literally, today I was trying to set an alarm. It says, which one would you like? You have 57.
Which one would you like? Oh my gosh. Story of my life. Gosh.
My grandpa told me the story that morning he was reading his Bible and he felt a presence. He felt the presence around him and it felt very strong. And he said it was female. He could feel it. It was there and he didn't know why, but it was peaceful. A few days later, my grandparents were notified that their daughter, Alice Rebecca Haynes, had been murdered. We're going to talk about this case, my Aunt Becky. And Willow is going to present the case as she does this great job of deep diving in these things. But then I'm going to offer who my aunt was. And we're going to get more into the case in the second episode, in the part 2. So, without further ado, Miss Willow, would you take it away?
I will attempt to do your Aunt Becky justice.
Thank you.
So, to set the scene, it's January 1995 in Bristol, Virginia. In the early morning hours, a frantic call comes into the police. The caller is a woman, a newspaper carrier just doing her normal rounds as she's done every day before. But this morning, she reports that there is a possible body in the middle of a residential road just off exit 10 on Interstate 81. Reportedly, she told the dispatcher it might just be a mannequin, but I'm not about to stick around and find out. Props to her because neither would I. It's never just a mannequin. Detective Kenneth L. Wilson is risen from his sleep to be called out to the scene. And middle of the night almost. It's the early morning hours, but we're talking probably between 2 and 4 in the morning. He speeds over there and is immediately taken aback by the sheer brashness of this crime. Detective Wilson works for a police department that hardly ever sees murders. He and his partner, Detective Ross Sheets, had tracked down a serial rapist in the mid-1980s, but other than that, they spend most of their time just on local crime. But instead, what he saw before him is the body of a middle-aged woman partially undressed who had been violently strangled, and her legs had been run over. I saw 2 different reports. In some reports, it was her left leg. In some reports, it was her right leg. One of her legs had clearly been run over. There were blood-stained tire tracks of an 18-wheeler leading away from her body. And when I said that she was violently strangled, the strangulation was so bad that her neck had been broken and they could see a part of the bone sticking out from the skin. Detective Wilson's partner, Detective Sheets, later claimed that when he first arrived to the scene, it actually reminded him of an episode he had seen on Unsolved Mysteries about an unknown truck driver who was reportedly kidnapping sex workers and leaving their bodies along the roads all across the Midwest. So he immediately wondered if perhaps this was a victim of that same trucker. The discovery of this body was the beginning of the end of one of the most prominent suspects that they thought was the Stargazer killer. Other than the manner of death and the placement of the body, there were few other clues that made Detective Sheets think of the Unsolved Mysteries episode. The fact that the woman's shoes were missing and her underwear was gone made him think of the episode, but other than that, it was a little bit different. The woman was dressed in light clothing, which made them think that she wasn't a local since she most certainly was not dressed for the typical January weather. Next to her was a pair of white slacks, and wedged between the slacks and her face was a Winn-Dixie grocery bag. In the pocket of the slacks, detectives found a piece of paper with a phone number written on it that was for a cab stand in Gainesville, Florida. This would later help them identify the victim as Brenda K. Hagee, a 45-year-old drifter from Bloomington, Indiana. She did have a history of arrests near truck stops that were known hot spots for sex workers. I could find in several different sources that she was a drifter that would travel across the East, but I wasn't able to find complete confirmation that she was in sex work. It was just assumed since the places that she went to were known hotspots. But because of these previous arrests, they were also able to confirm her identity through fingerprints. Detective Wilson and Sheets decided to send off the plastic bag for testing to see if they could get any prints off of it. It was kind of just a Hail Mary, especially since they knew that most of the fingerprints they would find would probably just be linked either to the victim herself or to other cashiers or grocery clerks. But it was all they had. However, on January 30th, 1995, just about a little over a week after they had found the body of Brenda, lab technicians were able to lift a fingerprint of an unidentified male from the grocery bag. The only problem was they spent weeks filtering through a computer system called the Automated Fingerprint Identification System to try and identify the fingerprint they had found. And this system had a record of fingerprints from all the people who had been arrested in 30 states. It's probably a little bit more now, but this is what it was back then. And even putting it through this computer system, they did not have a match. So it wasn't anybody from any of these 30 states that had been arrested in these 30 states. So instead, they sent the bag and the fingerprint off to Washington for the FBI to sort through their files of fingerprints of people who had been in the military or who had faced federal charges or who had been arrested in states that did not participate in the APHIS program. So obviously, this is a much bigger amalgamation of fingerprints. The FBI told the detectives that this hunt would take a few months to a year, and they had no other leads at this time. So, unfortunately, in that time, 2 more bodies turned up. On February 19th, 1995, the body of Sherry Masur, a 34-year-old native from Clearwater, Florida, was found wrapped in a blanket near Interstate 40 in Guilford County, North Carolina. Her autopsy showed that she had been smothered and that there were traces of cocaine in her system. Some reports say that she was actually known as Jane Doe until early April of that same year because they had struggled to identify her, even though she did have a history of arrests for sex work between the years of 1982 and 1994. Family and friends had last seen her alive on January 31st, 1995, while she was visiting with her sister in Maryland. He had picked up Sherry not too long after he had murdered Brenda. So this seems like it was a very quick escalation of his behavior. Then, on March 19th, 1995, the body of Alice Rebecca Haynes was found under an overpass off of I-81 in Kingsport, Tennessee, just 20 miles from Washington County, and her name is Alice Rebecca Haynes. There were several sources that called her Rebecca Alice Haynes, but obviously I went straight to the source. It is Alice Rebecca Haynes. She was a 36-year-old local to Columbus, Ohio, and also had a record for arrest for sex work near truck stops. She was found partially nude, strangled, and her body had also been, multiple reports stated that her body had been run over by an 18-wheeler, but Miss Carissa, who is, I
remember this when this was all happening. I was 17, and my aunts and my mom confirmed she was the only one that was not run over, and that's what made it different. Yeah, he did not run over her body. Yeah, I mean that might just be what they reported in the papers, but we're going to get the official reports for a later project, and we'll know for sure.
Maybe we'll do an update once we do that, and hopefully give you guys a better answer.
Yeah. but that's what my aunts have all told me and remember.
Authorities had been able to track Haynes previously to a truck stop in Salina, Kansas for most of the week before her death, until she went to Van Buren, Arkansas on March 17th and 18th. She was last seen alive at a truck stop around 1 a.m. on March 18th. It's suspected that this is probably where she was picked up. Both Alice and Sherry were found without their shoes and without their underwear. And also, again, this is very similar to how Brenda had been found, as well as many other bodies that had been found previously in the Midwest. By this point, Detective Wilson and Sheets had heard a rumor that there was a known trucker who had been driving across the Midwest abducting and strangling the sex workers. So this was partially from the Unsolved Mysteries episode. Mm-hmm. And the more they got into the investigation for Sherry and Alice, the more they were able to say, okay, this actually is probably the same person as who they're suspecting the Stargazer is. It wasn't known his actual name, but again, they knew that he would go by the CB handle Stargazer. And they also had heard that he drove a black Peterbilt truck. Friday, April 17th, 1995 started out with the FBI calling Detective Sheets to tell him that they still hadn't found a match for the fingerprint. I almost said fingerprint, so there's that for me. It started out with them saying, sorry, here's our update, it's nothing. We have found absolutely nothing. However, 45 minutes later, they called back to say that they had finally found a match for the fingerprint. The prints belonged to a man named Sean Patrick Goble, who had been arrested in West Memphis, Arkansas for resisting arrest, creating a public disturbance with a sex worker, and reckless driving. The West Memphis police also told the detectives that Goble was a long-distance hauler who worked for Rocky Road Express near Winston-Salem, North Carolina. The real kicker? He drove a black Peterbilt.
Didn't he also have military record?
Yes, I'm going to get into that in a little bit.
Okay.
I got you. Now, I also want to take a quick pause here to say that this man apparently would pronounce his name
Sin.
Scene?
I thought that was Sin. Was
Scene.
it Scene? I thought
Scene.
it was Sin. Okay.
Nope. Scene.
I know he pronounced his name wrong, like weird.
Yeah, he pronounced it wrong is what he did, because it's S-E-A-N, which is Sean. Wow. But I digress. Anyway, the detectives still took 5 days before they completed their arrest, simply because they wanted to do things carefully. They had multiple different jurisdictions who were in on this, and they had to make sure that nobody was going to tip off Goble, and he wouldn't have the chance to run before they were able to catch him. So finally, on April 12th, after working out the elaborate details with the FBI and authorities from Tennessee and North Carolina, they made their move. They went to Rocky Road Express and told the owners the evidence they had on Goble. They first started out just kind of feeling out to see if the owners were actually going to give them information. And they said, you can either give us your files, or we can go get a warrant and force you to give us our files. But either way, you're giving us your files. And so the owners decided that they would cooperate, and they went ahead and gave them all of their files on their employees. Reportedly, the employees were shocked at the news that they were there to arrest Goble for these murders, since they had reported that Goble seemed to be a stand-up employee and was somebody that was always very kind to everyone, which is shocking.
You hear that about people. I mean, think of Ted Bundy.
I know.
Such a charmer.
I know. I feel like that should be a sign. Like if you think that's how you know if you're on the right track, is you're like, well, I'm here to arrest this person who's suspected of these heinous crimes. You're like, well, he's just such a stand-up guy. And you're like, this is the one.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one.
Should be evidence. Enter that into evidence. Stand-up guy.
Said he was a stand-up guy. This is my evidence. There we go. So the owners of the truck stop told detectives that Goble was set to return at midnight that very same night.
Truck stop, or was it the truck depot? Where they...
No, it was the Rocky Road Express. Sorry, I skipped a line and said truck stop.
Oh, okay, got it. I was like, because the truck stop. Yeah.
No, he was set to return at midnight to the Rocky Road Express in North Carolina that night. I just skipped a line when I was reading. Sorry. Goble then radioed in about another hall that he had the opportunity to take, but he was told to leave it and come back. And honestly, this was something that made me think a little bit about the dispatcher that was in that situation, that he had to try to find a way to tell this man, no, leave that hall, which is a lot of money that this person could potentially make, not only for the company, but for himself. And he had to try to come up with some way to tell him, leave it and come back, that wouldn't sound suspicious at all.
Right. Yeah.
And I just like props to that dispatcher on coming up with something to say to be like, to get him to leave that and actually come back. However, the authorities waited for 8 hours before Goble finally showed up at 8 in the morning on April 13th, claiming that he had stopped to eat and sleep on the way back. And during these 8 hours, authorities were actually very concerned that he was taking the time to kill another person. I didn't read if there was any evidence that he had, but I'm interested to see in part 2, when we dive a little bit deeper into some of the theories, if we can link something to that time. That would be very sad, but very interesting. Fortunately for authorities, Goble didn't resist arrest. He was described by detectives as a giant man, 6'3" and over 300 pounds. At least 310 is what I saw in most reports. He was so big that they had to get multiple handcuffs to cuff him because one set wasn't big enough to fit around his wrist and keep his arms behind his back. One of the detectives reportedly said that man's wrist is as big around as my leg. It's kind of gross.
Keep that in mind, his size is for later.
I was keeping it in mind when I was listening to one other podcast that I've listened to that has covered this in any kind of detail. And I was like, anyway, I wrote a little something about it. So,
okay.
So who is this giant man that detectives have just arrested? Sean Patrick Goble was born on November 1st, 1966 to Father Kenneth and Mother Emma. Not too long after his birth, the family moved to Illinois, and this is where the first major event of Goble's life occurred. I did hear on another podcast that his father had been a sheriff, although in my research I didn't find that information, so I don't know if his dad was a sheriff or his dad was reporting on the sheriff's department, and the because his dad was saying the sheriff's department's coming after me and trying to hang all this stuff on me. Yeah, and so I in all of my research, and I was telling Carissa, there is not a lot on this case. Everything that one could find on this case is all just newspaper articles from the same few newspapers of the time. And I even had a few minute long subscription to the New York Times trying to find more information on this case. It's not easy to find more information. So I'm not 100% positive where that source got their information, but I did hear that, so I'm going to mention it. There is a possibility that he was either a sheriff or he had some kind of tie to the sheriff's department. But either way, very soon after moving to Illinois, Goble's father, Kenneth, would be arrested for the rape of a 10-year-old girl. Reports state that Goble was forced at 6 years old to wait in the truck outside of the house while the crime took place.
Yeah, it was a home invasion.
Yeah. And that's not even the most shocking part to me. The most shocking part is that he only got 4 years in prison for this crime.
And then and does it again.
Like I don't even know. I don't have words. Yes. And when they moved to New Mexico, he was arrested again, and this time served an 18-year prison sentence because he raped a 6-year-old. And which means he then got out in like 1994, 1995. So he still could have done more. I didn't read anything more about it, but I just 4 years? Really? Really? I mean, I understand that the justice system here.
I'm sorry, if you rape someone, you should be cut off, and if you want to get out, that's fine, but you don't have a product to use.
Yeah. And I don't care. I mean, male or female, if you're going and raping someone, the punishment has to be severe. And the justice system here, I don't even know why you can call it the justice system in those specific cases, because it's awful. It's awful. But 4 years for a 10-year-old, that just blew my mind. I was so stuck on that when I was doing this research, because it just felt like such a miscarriage of justice to me. It felt like that was, I don't know, it just kind of made me sick because I was like, that poor girl was only 14, between the ages of 14 and 16 when he got out.
Yeah, which kind of leads, like, was this a situation where if he's raping a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old, and how is that affecting the son, Sean, to where is this a genetic deviance already that's already genetically tied to this guy that's going to make him also a sexual deviant, and he's going to rape women? Mm-hmm.
He was there for the first one. I couldn't find any confirmation on what he knew of or how he was involved in any way with the second raping. But if his dad is sick enough to go and do this to a child, I don't even want to know what he's seeing at home. I don't want to know how his father is treating his mother. I think this is already fostering an environment in which Goble thinks that women are completely subservient and that he can do whatever he wants to them. In my mind, that is what I would believe. I couldn't find any reports to support that, but in my mind, that's kind of what I would infer.
Yeah. I don't know. We shall talk about this in a little bit, because there are reports of people that knew him where he lived with his different wives and girlfriends that claim he was a great person and like a softie.
I think here, I'll get into that. I do have thoughts. So after that whole situation, Goble lived with his mother in, I put in here that he lived in Rockford. I think he did, that he lived in Rockford and attended Auburn High School. In 1984, he dropped out during his senior year and joined the U.S. Army. So I know there was a podcast we both listened to, and they had stated that there was like a time period between him dropping out and going into the U.S. Army. All of my research was that he dropped out during senior year to go into the Army.
Well, I knew it. Yeah, I had known he was in the military prior to that podcast. I was listening to just that podcast, and it was very basic what they were talking about. But I did know he was military because that's how they found a lot of his prints.
Yes, because of that. Yep, that was something that I was like, oh, that makes sense. I personally was not able to find a lot of reports on his behavior while he was in the Army. I have heard that he was dishonorably discharged, and I wouldn't be surprised, specifically because I read in an article, and it was only one article that I read this, so I didn't write specific details because I wasn't sure if it was something that was sensationalized or if this was actually something that happened. But he had apparently, while he had gotten married, he did have a son, but during a short-lived marriage, he apparently would report an alleged rape by a sex worker, like he was raped by a sex worker, and they ended up finding out, and he would later admit that he made it up because he was trying to cover up his own affair. And of course, we know that adultery is taken very seriously in the military. So I would not be surprised if he was dishonorably discharged because of this situation. Yeah. I could not find anything confirming that, but I would not be surprised.
Yeah, definitely possible.
And of course, after that happened, his wife left him because that is, what else would you do? After this, not too long after this is when he moved to North Carolina, ended up moving to a trailer park and began working as a long-haul truck driver in 1991. The person that Goble worked for during his first job as a long-haul trucker apparently stated that Goble was a quote-unquote wimp. I love that. I did see in a lot of places that he liked to brag about himself, but there was nothing to actually substantiate. Like, he was all talk and nothing else. He liked to brag that he was basically like a womanizer. He was a ladies' man. He was proud of his weight and his size, and he was proud of how many miles he could log driving. He was proud of how many pizzas he could eat in one sitting. This is what he was proud, which I personally think is disgusting, but that is what he was proud of. There was also a report. I heard this in the podcast. I did not find any reports of this, so I'm just going to put that out there. But it has been reported that while he was working his first job, women's underwear and a lot of women's clothing, as well as shoes, which is going to be very important in our next part of this episode, were found in his truck during like one of their major cleanings. Goble was described by most others as intelligent, caring, but a bit egotistical because of how much he would brag about himself. However, there were also reports that he had been physically abused by an ex-girlfriend, which, if this is true, might kind of be where his first boss had said, oh, well, he's actually a wimp.
There is a girlfriend that reportedly stated that she did, if anything, she was the one that hit him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a woman that did report that.
And then she also said, too, that, and this was around 1993, so this was before they had found the bodies of Brenda, Sherry, and Alice. And this ex-girlfriend had reported that during one of these instances, when she was apparently going after him, he had placed his hands around her neck, but she was able to get away from him because she was really small. I wondered either if you are somebody who believes that he is only guilty of the 3 murders that we talked about. This was the beginning of his, oh, if I could put my hands around somebody, I can kill them. Personally, I think he did that because it wasn't the first time. But I digress. Anywho, however, even with all this backstory, with him being so proud of himself and thinking that he is just on top of the world, it didn't actually take very long for the detectives to break him down and get him to start confessing. After his arrest, they searched his rig, which had the words "The Wild One" written across the cab. There's also more, Carissa, if you want to say here.
Now, this one I want to confirm. I remember this being stated that somewhere on the cab there was writing, which we'll have to look at the reports, that he had the name Little Bit on like the passenger side, because sometimes truck drivers will put their handles. Like he had Stargazer on the one side of the Peterbilt, whereas the driver's side, and he had Little Bit on the other side of his.
And I couldn't find anything on that. I could find the Wild One, but that was like a inside. Like they would say it was emblazoned across the cab. And so it was a much larger written thing as compared to small writing. But again, just like we talked about, we're going to see if we can get the actual reports, because all I could find was mostly articles and it's very sensationalized. So there's going to be some small details that they're not going to get. Or the
details they assume, because this one was this way, this one would be that way. Right.
Yes.
And I mean, obviously my uncle, was there to help identify the body and stuff like that. So would know that kind of thing with my grandparents to pick her body up from Tennessee.
I just can't even imagine. Ugh. Well, inside his cab, after they started searching, they found travel bags, pornographic magazines, women's underwear, and they also found Alice's pocketbook, which proved that she had been there, that he had her, and definitively linked him to her. They also executed a search warrant for his trailer where they found more women's underwear and many, many pairs of women's shoes. I cannot stress enough how much I want you guys to keep these details in your brains for part 2. He has got a lot of women's underwear and women's shoes. This is more than just 3 pairs. Yeah. 2 women who lived near Goble in the trailer park, who I heard differing reports. They were either sisters to themselves, or I saw one report where they were his sisters.
He did have sisters, but I don't think they were his sisters.
I knew they were sisters. There was one report that said that they were his sisters, and I was like, I don't think that's right, because everything else was just that they were sisters. Yeah. But they did, in fact, in every single report, live near him in the trailer park. And they immediately tried to come to his defense as soon as they had learned that he was being arrested for these murders. They quickly claimed that he was gentle and kind, and that Goble would often call one of the sisters while he was on the road crying. And he wouldn't always give this sister a reason why he was crying. Sometimes he would give some reason that was very like, oh, my grandmother, I miss her, like something like that. And other times he just wouldn't give her a reason and just say that he just needed to talk to somebody.
He did make a comment about his grandmother. Like, he was a grandma's boy.
He was. Yeah. And those were sometimes he would say, my grandmother something, 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 and sometimes he wouldn't say anything.
Or just like, if I would have just took care of my grandma, maybe I wouldn't have done it.
Yes, yeah. He also would often give these 2 sisters jewelry and clothes, which later authorities believed belonged to the victims. And so they took this jewelry and clothes.
Maybe they were his sisters.
I literally only saw
I don't know.
in one report that they were his sisters. Everything else is just that they were sisters. I have no idea.
It's possible it's his sisters and they just live in the same trailer park.
Mhm.
Because, I mean, especially since they're defending him.
He thinks he's a ladies' man, so maybe he's just like,
Maybe.
oh, I can woo these ladies and get them to still like me.
What were you going to ask me, though?
But I was going to ask you because, again, the reports that he would give them jewelry and clothes that they later believed belonged to the victims. And I wondered if your family had ever heard anything about maybe any of Alice's belongings being passed on to these women, if that was ever anything that you guys had heard about.
No, but...
No, okay.
So, yeah, when I get into the story of who my aunt is, or who my aunt was, she was not well received by a lot of the family as I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
It was always like, oh, Aunt Becky's there, hide your purse. Aunt Becky's there, make sure you put your valuables away.
Mm-hmm.
But my Aunt Becky always sent me postcards and always sent me jewelry.
You guys didn't just see the face that I made. Interesting.
Turquoise, always turquoise.
Interesting.
And she loved unicorns. She had a unicorn tattoo.
Was that one of the ways that they identified her, was with that tattoo? Yeah, I think I remembered you telling me something about that. I don't think I'm prepared for the rabbit hole you're going to send me down next week when we dive into part 2. But anywho, before we get there, back at the station during interrogation, Detective Wilson and Sheets were able to get a much better idea of what had happened to Brenda and Alice. Goble claimed that he was just trying to help Brenda by giving her a ride. That's all. That's it. He just picked her up to help her. He picked her up at a truck stop that was a hot spot for sex work and was going to take her to wherever she needed to go. But then, after he had stopped to just take a nap, he suddenly woke up to her on top of him, insisting on having sex, which he reportedly did not want. He did not want to have sex with this woman, who was a sex worker that he picked up at a truck stop known for sex work. I don't know if you can tell by my tone of voice, but there's no way.
Maybe.
He said, I grabbed her neck and we wrestled around for a little bit. She hit me and tried to grab my neck, according to his statement. Shortly after that, her hands dropped to her side. I knew something was wrong. I tried to get her to breathe. I couldn't get her to breathe. I panicked. I'm sorry, but strangling a person is not a quick thing. It doesn't happen quickly. And not to mention the fact he says, oh, well, I grabbed for her neck. If you're just grabbing for somebody's neck, I get this dude is huge. But she was so violently strangled that her neck was broken and there was a bone sticking out through the skin. I know he's a big man, but there's also a lot of muscle around your neck. He had to put some genuine force into doing this. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't. You will never be able to convince me otherwise. Anywho, yeah. What were you going to say?
And when he did this with his hands.
Yes.
And so was there, and that we may only have to wait to see the actual case, but was there evidence he had sex with her?
Yes.
So he did have sex with her? Like there was proof that he had sex with her?
I will get into that towards the end, but I believe that there is, and I'll tell you why towards the end.
Okay. Go ahead.
Because it has me shook and I'm still mad about it. But anyway, we'll get there. Alice's murder, however, wasn't an accident according to Goble. It all happened over a disagreement over sex, after which he reportedly held her head between his legs until she was no longer breathing, which is also disgusting. And I am so sorry for your aunt, and I'm so sorry to tell you that. I know you probably already know, but disgusting. As for Sherry, Goble's reasoning for murdering her was even more selfish. He picked her up in Fredericksburg, Virginia, had sex, and then simply decided to strangle her before dumping her body. He had no reason. He just decided that that was the time. And again, I felt as if there was a clear escalation in his behavior. He murdered these 3 women within about 3 to 4 months' time. It was very back to back to back. He confessed to these 3 murders, and he was only 28 at the time that he was arrested. So he's actually relatively young, which makes me even more just so shocked and sad.
Which makes you, because this was so gruesome, and we know how serial killers escalate,
Mm-hmm.
This was a quick escalation.
Yes, and the fact that he is suspected of other murders that happened earlier, he could have been starting this spree, let's see,
Or
as
changed
young
his
as 20.
MO.
Yeah. If he is guilty of his other murders that they suspect him of, which I guess I'll be making a decision on next week, then he could have started this murdering spree as young as 23, which is just wild. And I mean, I know he had a really awful upbringing as well, obviously, but I don't know. It's so crazy to me. Goble did enter a guilty plea for the murders of Alice and Brenda, and he received 2 consecutive life sentences for those 2. They were both tried in either Tennessee or North Carolina, I believe. And then Sherry, he was tried for Sherry's murder in Virginia. I think it was it might have been Kentucky. I know it was a different state. I just apparently didn't write down which one, but
Kentucky or Tennessee, like where he's serving. And
because I wrote down that he was later extradited to face the trial for the murder of Sherry. I just didn't write down where, but he was extradited to face trial for the murder of Sherry, in which he entered a guilty plea for 2nd-degree murder, and he was given a 3rd life sentence. And he entered the plea for 2nd-degree murder.
I thought he had 2 life sentences served back to back, and then a 14-year sentence, and then eventually a 4th conviction on top of that one.
So here's what I'll say. Mm-hmm. So that he has 2 consecutive life sentences for Brenda and for Alice for 1st-degree murder. Now, Sherry, he pled guilty to 2nd-degree murder, and the reason for this is because of the cocaine in her system. There was enough reasonable doubt that they couldn't say this was premeditated. Like they could say that it was an accident. Or that
really? But with all the other evidence?
Yes, really.
Okay,
I think it's ridiculous.
The other 2 are not accidents, but just because she had cocaine in her system makes it her less of a... Okay, that's stupid.
Yeah. And this honestly opens up some of the problems in the justice system when it comes to people not only who are in sex work in a much more unsafe situation, but also in people who are homeless or who struggle with addiction in general. When they do come across situations like this where they are hurt and or murdered, the justice system is so unfair to them because they're seen as less than. These people, I'm sorry, I really do not care about your beliefs in this situation. These are not people who are less than. They are people. They had lives. They are humans.
They had mothers. They had family at one point. These used to be little babies.
Yes, and that's why I say in this specific situation, I really do not care about your beliefs. These were still human beings, and they did not deserve to be treated as less than, and they most certainly did not deserve to die in this horrendous way. There's my tangent. Yeah. There's my little tangent I felt like I had to go on there for a second.
Except for when we're talking about the murderer themselves, they can just die.
Well, yeah. If we're talking about the murderer himself.
You become less human when you take that first life on purpose.
Exactly. I'm pretty sure before this drops, we're going to have had our conversation about the shapeshifters, where I talk about Lord Voldemort and him murdering people for his Horcruxes. So it has been proved time and time again, even in fantasy, that if you murder, you become less than human. In that situation, I'm going to say there are a few cases.
Yeah, if you murder, for sure.
If you murder premeditated for a stupid reason like this, you are less than. What I was actually going to get to is that with that life sentence for Sherry, I learned recently on another podcast, shout out to True Crime Creepers, that life sentence, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe it's life sentence with the possibility of parole means that you only have to serve 15 years before you become eligible for parole. So it's possible that this 3rd life sentence was a life sentence with the possibility of parole, which would mean it's only 14 to 15 years added on until he becomes eligible for parole.
That's probably why he's trying to get an appeal, so that way he can serve that other one out and get a parole.
Well, so with that, sorry, I had to move and my chair creaks. I wrote it down. I have to get out my quote unquote murder book, which is my leather bound notebook that I write a lot of my notes in. I found afterwards, I think I was just kind of double checking some different newspaper articles to see if I could find any more information to add to it. And if I could find it, which I might be able to, I might not, There it is. So an investigator reported that Goble didn't seem to really comprehend the serious nature of what he had done. He said, and I quote, "I'm going to do my time in Tennessee and get this behind me so I can get on with my life." So I think personally, I can't remember who I was talking to. I think I was talking to a friend about this because I couldn't talk to you until this episode. So I think I was talking to another friend about this. And I remember saying that I personally thought the part of the reason why he's like, well, I'm just going to do my time for this and get on with my life is two different things. One, he's remembering his dad who only got the freaking 4-year sentence for raping a child. And so he's just like, oh, whatever, I'm just going to get my time for this and move on. Or two, which is more likely, is he has gotten away with so many murders at this point that he's just like, it's not a big, like he's so desensitized to it. And he just like cannot comprehend that other people actually value human life. Because just like Carissa said, he is now trying to get an appeal, and Carissa was granted a new trial in 2000, or a new hearing at least in 2018. Now, gosh darn it all, I could not find one thing about this new trial or this new hearing. Couldn't find anything.
Has it happened? Because even though you're granted, doesn't mean it's actually happened.
Well, and 2020 was when the pandemic hit. And so
everything's
these things are so slow moving. So it's possible that it was scheduled for sometime in 2020 and just has not happened yet. But I searched everywhere to try to find something. Couldn't find anything. But the reason why he was wanting this new trial is because he wanted them to do a DNA analysis of vaginal swabs done on Brenda's body, which is why I believe that they do have proof that he did have sex with her, even though he claimed that she was trying to have sex with him and he didn't want it. Because he's sitting there saying, well, if you do DNA analysis with the vaginal swabs that you have on Brenda's body, then you're going to find that I didn't do it. How do you know then, sir, that they're going to find anything? Because you said that she was insisting on having sex with you and you didn't want it, which implies that you tried to get her off of you without doing anything. But now you're saying, test my DNA against the swabs that you have and you'll find that I didn't do it. Sir, that contradicts your confession. That contradicts your story. How do you know? It doesn't contradict
the fact that he said he killed her.
No, but
he just wants to clear his name that he didn't have sex with her.
No, he's trying to clear his name that he didn't do it at all.
Oh, but he already admitted to killing her.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, he already admitted to killing her. But why is he
already?
Yeah.
Why are you already?
So why is it
admitted?
important that you clear your name about having sex with her though, and proving that you didn't have sex with her?
Because he thinks, which I was like, are you really this? He seems to think that if they compare his DNA to her vaginal swabs, they won't find his DNA in there, which means he didn't do the crime at all, which is ridiculous. All it does is prove that you perhaps weren't the last man to have sex with her. That is all it proves. That's it. It does not prove that you did not do the crime.
This means that you did not finish with her.
I can say that too.
You did not complete said act.
You did not complete the action. Yeah. But I still was like, if he's sitting there saying, compare my DNA to her vaginal swabs, I'm like, okay, then you know that there's something in there. And you stated that you did not have sex with her at all.
Well, I'm again, devil's advocate here. He's saying she was on him. He woke up to her being on him. So he's probably just trying to state his story. She was on me and this was self-defense and I didn't mean to kill her type situation. He's probably trying to prove I did not have sex with that woman. I didn't have sexual relations with that woman.
Guess what, buddy?
Listen, sir, you are not Bill Clinton.
Does not prove that you still killed her.
No, it doesn't prove that he didn't kill her. What I'm saying is he's trying. That's why I asked you. And there's a reason for that later that I will divulge. Why I'm asking. Because this is all only a very short amount of time between her death, Sherry, and then my aunt's death.
Yes, it is a very short period of time.
And my aunt's death is the only one that he said he did on purpose. As far as
no, that's true, because he did say with Sherry it was he said he did it, he meant to do it, but it was a very split second. Well, I guess I'll just do this. I guess I'll just kill her. It wasn't a planned, thought out thing, whereas it did his confession about Alice certainly was I wanted to do this. This was my choice.
Yeah. And he didn't kill anybody afterwards.
Well, Carissa, I'm not prepared for what you're about to put me through next week. I've heard very small snippets here and there of things, like little tidbits that she's told me.
But I'm going to give you one little story to close this episode, so you know where we're going next week.
I will say my last update before we go on to what you're going to say is that he is still in prison, and currently he won't be up for parole until 2056 when he's 88 years old. He can go rot in prison. And with that being said, I will shut up and let you tell me your story.
Okay, so to close out this episode before we, close out and leave you hanging. After my aunt's murder, and this is kind of like, this is just by happenstance. My mom worked for the local flower shop in town in Waverly, Ohio. And they got a phone call to send stargazer lilies to my grandparents' address with a message to them from an anonymous source. And they went to my mom and said, hey, showed her, and she said, absolutely not. We are not fulfilling this. And my grandma my grandma has since passed, but my grandma never liked stargazer lilies after that point. It was Sean Goble who called to have flowers sent to my grandparents in condolence for the murder that he committed to my aunt.
He killed her.
Yes, but the plot will twist in the next episode and how they knew each other.
Rissa!
All right. Thanks for listening.
I hate you.
All right. So thank you for listening to this first part of the episode on Sean Goble, the Interstate Killer or the Stargazer Killer. We're not really sure what to call him besides, the guy who killed my aunt.
I'm not okay.
Sorry. I was trying to think of a story because I have so many stories. Because in the next episode, we're not only going to talk about her relationship with Sean Goble, and the fact that the very last phone call that she made, who that was to and who she was with. We'll talk about that in the next episode.
My gosh. This is going to get so bad.
You can always follow us on our social medias. You can go to theparallaxpodcast.com, click on those little icons. You can email us, info@theparallaxpodcast.com. Share any kind of stories, or if you know something in the next week before we, well, I guess not. They wouldn't know anything.
No, sorry.
Won't be enough time. But still, you can still
tell us
email
afterwards.
Yeah, tell us afterwards.
Yeah.
But anyways, until then, thank you for listening. I'm Carissa.
And I'm Willow. And I'm so sorry that you guys now have to sit here and just wonder and be frustrated and sad, just like I am right now.
I promise to bring you a bunch next week.
Okay.
All right. Later, mortals.
Bye, mortals.